Sister Joella
Good
Miller.
morning. Good
How
morning.
are you this morning?
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Very
and
well.
This July morning,
Yes.
I must say, as we celebrate the life of Sister Betty Waldron, whose burial is today.
Yes.
Tell me this, will you please? I know when I think of you, I think of Chicago.
Yes.
So you must be from the south side of Chicago.
I'm not.
You're not.
I'm not.
Well, you're the first one I met that hasn't been.
I was born in Elgin, Illinois, and my father was an over-the-road truck driver. So I left Illinois when I was about 3 because he had a job in Toledo, driving truck. So we lived in Toledo until I was 7 or 8. I started school there. I went to 13 different grade schools because of his terminal change, and we always wanted to live close to the terminal so we could see him more often, because he'd leave on Monday and he wouldn't be back until Friday. So that's how we did it.
I think that would make the Guinness Book of Records.
I don't know about that. I'm sure there are others.
So 13 grade schools.
13
How many
grades.
high schools?
2 high schools.
Oh.
Traverse City.
Oh.
I went to Traverse City for my freshman year, and it's the same high school my mother went to, and I even had one of her teachers.
Oh, my.
And
Adrian Dominicans?
No. This is a public high school.
Oh, uh-huh.
And then we moved back to Illinois because my father wanted to go back to where his brothers lived, because he had 2 living brothers. So we moved in with them in a big farmhouse, and we lived with them for about a year. And I went to St. Edward High School.
In Elgin.
St. Edward Central Catholic High School.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
For how many years?
3. Sophomore, junior, senior.
So that's where you first met the Adrian?
No, I really met the first ones with Sister Jane Payette in Rockwood. 5th grade. I had her in 5th grade in Rockwood.
Oh, my.
One of my travels around. Yes, Sister Jane Payette.
Did you have any other religious orders along the way?
Oh, yes, the IHMs. The Ursulines. I started with the Ursulines in Toledo at St. Francis de Sales Elementary School, where I made my first communion. So that was the first school I went to, and I had the Ursuline sisters.
Oh, didn't you love the IHMs, too?
I loved them. I almost entered the IHMs.
Well, what kept you back?
Well, I was finishing 8th grade, and I really wanted to enter. So I talked to my father. We had to have had a family meeting, so house meetings were very, So we had this meeting of the family, and my father said to me, if you were going to come to me with a boy that you wanted to marry, what would I tell you? And I said, oh, I could never marry because I'm too young. And he says, and you're too young to make this decision.
Wow.
If you want to still go when you finish high school, then no one will stand in your way. So,
well, God bless Father.
That's right, because I ended up with the Adrian Dominicans, and I ended up being an Adrian Dominican, which is the greatest gift God has ever given me.
Because you went to St. Edward's.
Because I went to St.
Edward's.
Right.
Yes.
Sister Catherine Dennis was my sponsor.
Oh, dear woman.
And Sister Carmelia was the principal.
Oh, my heavens. I bet you could tell a few stories about Sister Carmi, as we called her.
Carmi, yes.
Yes.
The kids called her Carmi, too.
Yes.
Yes. She was a wonderful woman, a great principal. I was on the school newspaper, and when we'd bring the paper over to the convent when it was finished, the highline, and she would sit in the parlor on a rocking chair, and we'd all sit around her on the floor. And she'd read it from cover to cover. When she got all done, then she'd make her comments. It was quite an experience to do that with her. So.
An enjoyable one, I would think.
Oh, absolutely. We loved her.
Yes.
We absolutely loved her.
I don't know of anyone who didn't.
Yeah.
She was that beautiful of a woman. I understand that you are unique in all this world for having been missioned by Mother Gerald before you even entered.
That's correct.
How did that come about?
Well, it was the end of May, and Sister Carmelia got a call from Mother Gerald, and she said to her, you have a girl there who's going to enter. She's got all her papers in. Everything is in great shape. She's a good woman. She's a good girl. And I want you to have her go over to the St. Mary's and finish teaching the rest of the year.
You're a senior.
I'm a senior. I have 2 or 3 weeks of school to go yet. So she sends for me, and I'm thinking, oh God, what did I do? So I went up to her office, and she told me, and I said, what about my schoolwork? She said, we'll take care of that. You're not to worry about that. But I'm going to call your parents today and explain to them what's going on. So when I got home from school that night, I said to my mother said to me, well, what do you think about this? And I said, well, I don't have any problems with it. And she said, well, your father and I talked about it, and as long as you get your schoolwork done, we think it's a good thing, because if Mother Gerald wants you to do it, it must be okay.
Oh my God.
So that's what I did for the last 2 weeks of my senior year. I taught 3rd grade.
Were you taking the place of someone who had gotten sick?
Sister had a heart attack and had to come back to the Mother House.
Oh my.
So that's why I
So
did it.
you had experience teaching before you entered.
I tell you what, if anything would have discouraged me, it would have been that.
Well, it was the end of the year.
Yeah,
you
it was
know
the end
how
of the year, right.
itchy
Right. But I had a good time. I had a good time with the kids.
Oh, that's right.
So
But that kind of set a pattern for your life, didn't it?
yes, it did. Yes, it did. I loved the kids, and we always tried to make learning fun. So anyway.
Have you ever been missioned outside of Illinois?
No, except here.
Yes. How long have you been on
I was in
campus?
Illinois, and they must have got it on the card. Illinois. No, I was in all the dioceses of Illinois, the northern diocese, Rockford, Joliet, and in the Archdiocese of Chicago.
Do you have a plaque along the way in honor of Joella Miller, who gave her lifeblood?
Blood to Illinois. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where did you start teaching in Illinois?
I started teaching at St. Nicholas of Tolentine. And I had Sister Florentine Shannon was my superior, Bernadette Shannon, whom I absolutely loved. She was such a schoolwoman. She taught me so many things. She believed that every young sister should know how to run a school.
Aye.
So we all took our turn in the office, and then she'd go in our classroom and teach, because she loved to teach.
What do you mean you took your turns in the office?
Well, we'd be in the office for a whole day.
Playing principal.
Playing principal.
Not playing, but being principal.
And meeting all the problems that came in, whatever it was. And she says, if you got something you can't deal with, you come and get me. So that's what we all did.
Extraordinary.
We all learned to be principals.
And
So
you did eventually become
I
a
did
principal.
eventually become a principal. That's right. I did.
What was your favorite place teaching?
Oh, we did things at every school it was, but probably Star of the Sea with Kate Hartnett.
Oh.
I did cooperative learning there. I had
Cooperative learning.
That's what I called it. I don't know what it was called, but that's what I called it.
What does that?
Well, I had Kate hired me. I had been at Sacred Heart in Joliet, and she hired me to come to the Star of the Sea and teach what is called a bridge room. That would be the kids that were going into 4th grade, but were not quite ready for 4th grade. So I had 18 kids like this. Their reading level was from 1-1.
Oh my.
1-1 to about 2-1. Or 2-2, something like that. And then I had 20 of the very brightest in the class. So I had to be creative enough to figure out what I was going to do with those who were having problems learning and those that knew everything already, and they were trying to teach me, because that's sometimes how those kids are. So what I did is called it cooperative learning. I divided them up so that and I put all their desks together so there were 6 in a group. And what would happen is we would do projects together, and everybody at the table would get the same grade.
Say that again.
Every child at the table would get the same grade.
Oh my, what a challenge.
So that meant that the ones that were brighter had to help those that were not, that were having problems. Mm-hmm. And I always explained to the brighter kids, God gave you these gifts. Why he did, we don't know. But these other children are having difficulty, and you can probably teach them better than I can, because you're closer to their age. So that's what they did. That's what we did. We did a lot of nice
I
projects.
bet that was successful.
It was very successful. And by the end of the year, almost all of those kids were on grade level reading, which was,
Amen.
I attribute to these
Sure.
kids, because they'd take them to the corner and have them read. And they did all these things, all these wonderful things.
Because you were all working for the same thing.
Yeah, right, right.
and
Well, I
to-
didn't do every class that they shared it, but I did like history and geography and those kinds of things. Mathematics is different, a little harder, because some of them were having a hard time with it, but those things we could.
So, was it competitive then between
Well,
the different groups?
I tried not to put competition into it, because those slower learners had enough competition in their life. They didn't need it then.
But I mean, from group of six
Oh,
to
group of six, yeah, they did it themselves. I didn't do it, but they did it. And one year, Kate liked to do creative things in your classrooms. So one year I did everything with Indians. We had math the way the Indians would have it. We had, I should say, Native Americans.
Yes.
We had spelling and arithmetic and reading. We read stories about Native American kids, and we did all these kinds of things. And among the things we did for our art classes, we made a 10-foot tall totem pole
Oh my heavens! In the classroom.
in the classroom.
Oh my.
And the kids knew what a totem pole was, and they knew how to put it together. So the tables had their piece of the totem pole to tell the story. So they each had a piece of the totem pole. Well, Kate thought this was fantastic. So she would come in and every day and check out the totem pole. So when it was all done, I said, now what am I going to do with it? And she said, I got just the place for it. So we put it at the entranceway of the school, tied it to the hole that went from the first floor to the second floor. We had open stairways in those days, of course. And she'd stand outside of her office all during dismissal and when the kids came to school, and she'd say, please don't punch the totem pole. Please don't punch the totem pole. So she often told me she's going to write a book about education, and she was going to call it, Please Don't Punch the Totem Pole.
Oh, I wish she had.
Yeah.
I wish she had.
Yeah.
She was.
She's a
amazing
wonderful
principal too, wasn't
wonderful teacher, and a wonderful principal, very creative.
She? Well, you had a lot of mentors along the way.
I did.
First Florentine and.
Then I went to St. Philip Neri in Chicago, and I had Sister Georgina Lesnicki,
Well, lucky you.
who has also been a mentor for my life. Yeah. When I wanted to be principal, I went and talked to her. What did she think about that and all that? And then when I was asked about being superintendent, I went and talked to her, and she was the one that recommended I go to Rockford. So that's what I did.
Where were you principal?
I was principal at St. Clair Montefalco in Chicago.
That was a large school, wasn't it?
There were two of everything. Yeah.
Enough already.
Yeah.
And you had all nuns for staff?
No, I had partly lay people, but they were good people. Yeah, yeah.
And then how did you happen to get to Rockford?
Well, I had finished being principal at St. Clair's, and that had been a relatively wonderful experience for me, and only because I had great teachers. I had like Margaret Ringo and Dolores DeBetz in my junior high school. You can't find two better junior high school teachers than those two. They were absolutely fantastic, and what they could get out of kids is unbelievable. I had Kathy Klingon. She was, I think she taught 6th grade, and Anne Beauvais.
Oh my.
She was there before Dolores and Margaret came. So I had wonderful teachers along the way. So anyway, that was how I did
Well,
it.
how did word get to Rock?
Well, I went to see Georgina after I was finishing up, and I thought I would like to work in the diocesan office. So I went to talk to her to ask her what she thought, and she said, "Sure, go for it." She says, "I think Rockford's looking for a assistant superintendent." So I applied, and I got the job. So that's where I went. Sister Karen O'Kelly was the superintendent. She was a Springfield Dominican.
And then did you eventually take her place when?
She left after a couple of years. We had they changed the the bishop changed the way the diocese was organized. So we had vicars, and we had a vicar of education. And she left then after he was made vicar, and then the bishop asked me if I would be superintendent. So I said sure.
Who is the bishop?
Bishop O'Neill, Arthur Joseph O'Neill.
Was he good to
Wonderful,
you?
wonderful man.
He appreciated you.
He appreciated me. I was on the priests. All the vicars then were all priests. All the rest of the vicars, like the vicar of Hispanics, the vicar of religious, the vicar of clergy, all these vicars. And once a month we'd have a meeting with the bishop. We'd go in his office and sit around his big table there, me and all these priests. So out in the hall we kibitz, because bishop had definite ideas about things. So I remember one time, one of the priests wanted to get something across, and he said, he won't listen to me. You ask him.
Wow.
Because he listens to you. So we went into the meeting, and we got it going along, and this came up, and then I said, Bishop, did you ever think about blah, 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 blah? And he said, you know, that's a great idea. That's just what the priest had told me out in the hall.
So you were persuasive.
Persuasive, correct.
And he made it easy.
And I knew that he liked me a lot.
Yes.
Well, when I was was nominated to be chapter prioress, I went to him. I had been with him. I've been in the diocese 13 years at that point in time. It was time for me to move on anyway. So I went to him and I said, Bishop, I have been nominated to be chapter prioress in Chicago. And he said, damn it. They're going to elect you. I said, now don't be too sure about that. This has happened before, so don't be too sure about it. He says, they'd be fools if they didn't elect you.
Oh, how beautiful.
Anyways, so I was elected, and he was not happy, to say the least. And so I had an assistant superintendent who I had worked very closely with. She was Cincinnati Dominican, and so she took over being superintendent.
Oh, it was wonderful to have that transition.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. She knew how I operated, and so things could move right on.
So you moved back to Chicago.
So I moved back to Chicago. I lived at St. Catherine La Brea. I wanted to live in a community when I was chapter prioress. So I moved back and lived in that community. Yes.
When you say community of our sisters,
Our sisters, yeah, St. Catherine and La Brea. Right.
Never.
There were 7 of us there.
Oh.
Right.
And were your offices there?
No, my offices were in hometown. Yeah.
And is this when there were 2 chapters?
That's when there were 2 chapters. Pat Brady was the other chapter prioress, and you know I love Pat, and we worked very, very well together. We're in the same crowd for one thing. Okay. And when the election was going on, she kept saying, "You got to get elected. You got to get elected." So anyway, then I was elected, and we were chapter prioresses of the 2 chapters. And then when we left office, we were starting to merge them. I don't think they were. They might have been. I don't remember, but I think they were ready to be merged because Sally Fergus took over as chapter prioress after me, and they were getting ready to merge them together as one chapter.
Is that because of numbers?
Numbers, right? Right.
So while you were chapter prioress with Pat, did you have one side of the city? And
it didn't work out exactly that way. She had the upper peninsula and the upper part. Well, anybody that was outside of Chicago, she had, and then I had everybody that was not everybody, but all my people were in Chicago. Right.
At that time, were you on the boards of our institutions, like Regina?
I was at Regina, right? I was on the Regina board, right? And I had been on the Regina board before that, so yeah.
Well, that was a wonderful 6 years then, wasn't it?
Oh, it was a great 6 years. I love the sisters.
Did you ever have a sabbatical?
I did when I finished. When I finished in 2000, I had a sabbatical, 99 and 2000. I had a sabbatical year in which I buried 2 of my very best friends. Kathleen Harkins died during that time. And she had made her videotape, her video of the tapestry
Yes.
bidder, and I was her producer. that was a new experience for me. I didn't even know what a producer did, but anyway, I did.
You were the producer.
And so we made that videotape, and she was so ill because she had cancer, and she was
Too young.
She was just so ill during that time.
So
one
talented.
time in the middle of the whole thing, she gets a crying jag on. So I take her back behind the scenery, and I said, we hired this television crew to do this. So I said, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this videotape? She said, yeah. I said, well, then stop crying, wash your face, and get out there and do it. So she did. Sometimes you have to have tough love.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Thank God.
it turned out very nicely. The only problem we had, we shot the whole thing twice, and then they edited it. So the first time she did the bag lady, True to the Bag Lady was the last one she did. The second time she did it, she wore a red scarf, which I didn't even notice it while she was videotaped it. So they couldn't switch them around because she had this red scarf on the second time we videotaped it.
Oh,
so
my.
anyway, then it worked out all right.
Yeah. I can't remember her religious name. Can you? I suppose
It'll come to me.
Yes, very talented.
She was very gifted. Very gifted.
Had you been friends with Nancy Murray?
Yes, Nancy Murray was her student.
Oh.
In fact, Nancy many times in her presentations gives a tribute to Kathleen as being her teacher.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Right.
Yes.
So, yes, she was Nancy's teacher.
So at one point here, I asked you how long you've been on campus. So you must have, after your sabbatical, come this way.
I did. It was in 2000, and Maureen Comer gave me a call, and she asked me if I would come to interview to be the director of operations for the campus, because this council was going to do it differently. You know how the counselors take a different office, and well, this time they didn't want to do that. So I took all the offices, and they all reported to me, which was great. Oh, maintenance. Well, Lee Cooney and all the offices that she reported to me.
Oh.
Maintenance and all those places, and on HR and all that. I had all those.
Well, that was a huge
Yes,
responsibility.
it was pretty good, but pretty big. But
that was during Janet Capone's time.
that was during Janet Capone's time. Then I was asked to oversee the building of Weber, a rebuilding of Weber. So I did that. Wore a hard hat every day.
Wow.
That was a wonderful experience.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And did anyone work with you on that project?
Well, I worked Anne Romaine Fallon. After we got into the project, I'm very good with the building part of it, because I understand how that. To me, it's logical and does it. I'm not too good on the pretty stuff. So, and Virginia had died before this.
God, Virginia.
So,
Hafey Wells.
Virginia Hafey Wells. So I knew Anne Romaine, so I went to Anne Romaine and I asked her if she would like to work with me on Weber, and she could do the inside of the building. She could work with the interior decorators, because she was into that. I'm not into that at all. And I says, I don't care if there's something you want to ask me about it, fine, but just take it over. So she did. She picked out, well, I helped her pick out some things like the carpeting and some of that kind of stuff, but most of everything else she did. She did all the beauty inside that building. I attribute all that to Anne Romaine. She did all that. She chose everything that was supposed to go in the building and make it beautiful as it was. So,
that was the year that Weber became private rooms with a bathroom.
Yeah.
Up to that time, they had general bathrooms,
that's right.
correct?
They gutted the whole building, and they redid the whole thing. Well, I had an architect from the design school in Detroit, and he came out and he met with me, him and Steve Vogel, who was the head of the design school at U of D. And they came out and looked over the building and told me how much they were going to charge me to design the building, which wasn't too bad. So we went ahead and had them design how it should look, and they did a fantastic job. Just a couple things we changed. Like they wanted an outside cascade coming down the outside. I said, we don't need a cascade on the outside of the building. Besides, I'm thinking about how much money it's going to cost.
Yes.
So anyway, I think they did a wonderful job. Notice in the lobby we have wooden places where there's wood.
Yes.
And they put that in on purpose so that when the person at the desk might not see somebody, she would hear them walking on the wood.
Oh.
So that's why we put that in there.
Oh, my.
So
one thing that I find remarkable in the change, architectural change, is the stairway going down to the basement.
that's right. So it's
I mean, to the garden room, because
Right.
not everyone could find their way to the garden room.
Right. Well, that was an interesting day they put that in. I remember it was supposed to be a curved
Oh.
stairway, which it is a little bit curved. And I remember the day they put that in. That was just a red letter day. That just set the whole place off. And then the panels. Now, when we finished it, we had to have it finished for the chapter. The day the chapter opened, you know, those two plates that are on the outside of the elevator
Yes.
with our Dominican logo on them,
Yes.
they were putting those in as the sisters were registering at the door. That's how close we made it. We still had a few things.
But
we
you
didn't
did
do.
it.
Yeah,
You
we did
did it.
I did.
Yeah.
Whatever. With a lot of help.
Sister Joella, have you always been called Joella from the time of
No.
your birth?
My baptismal name is Mary Fay. Mary after my grandmother, my father's mother, and Fay after my mother's mother. I was named before I was born.
So Mary's a very important name in your
Very
family.
important name in our family. We have the oldest girl in the family for the last 6 generations has been called Mary. We have my great grandmother's cross that she brought from Ireland, and it's been passed down from Mary to Mary to Mary to Mary to Mary. So
you had it at some point in your life.
I had it, yes,
Briefly.
I did. Briefly. In fact, I wore it when I wore the wedding gown to come up. You know,
Yeah.
I wore it that day. That was it. And then I gave it to my
As
sister.
a postulate,
As
becoming a novice.
right.
Yes.
And I gave it to my sister.
Yes. Beautiful. Joella, your last years on campus after Weber, I know you were medically challenged somewhere.
Well, I have been very healthy my whole life, and that's a gift that God has given to me, and I'm grateful, very, very grateful. But I had a little setback. I was director of operations, and then I was asked to be director of special projects, in which we redid the house over there where the formation house. We redid that. And we redid the house where Donna Markham lived. We put a back porch on that with screens and all that stuff.
My.
And some other special projects that I had done. And then after that, I think we had a change of prioress. And then I was director of maintenance, which I
Yes.
loved.
I know
working
you
with
did,
the men.
yeah.
Oh, I love working with the men.
Right up
I
your
did.
alley.
Right up my alley,
Yeah,
yes. I
yeah.
loved working with the men. And during that time, we put all of the heating, air conditioning on computer. So we can, the director and the person that's in charge of the computers in the maintenance can go home from his house. He can change how the heating and air conditioning is here.
Wow.
So we put everything on computer during that time.
Well,
and-
thank you. What a gift.
Yeah, well, it was good. I had a lot of help with that because I'm not as computer savvy as I'd like to be. But I talked to a lot of people, and they felt this is the best way to go. So we did. We did it. With Maureen Comer was great behind that too. So I worked with
Joella,
her
I
very
know
close.
you have a sister who's an associate.
Yes, I do.
And what message would you like to give her as we come to the end here?
Well, my sister Pat is my very best friend. We've always been best friends.
Does she live in Illinois?
No, she lives in Florida, and I love her very much. And we share everything. I call her just about every day, every other day, 3 days a week, whatever. Anyway, we are in contact all the time.
Does she, as a result of Pat marrying, do you have nieces and nephews?
I have my sister Pat married Richard Kraft, who's a wonderful man. Just a great. If I could pick out a brother, that's who I'd pick out. He's just a wonderful man. And they have 6 children. And Pat said, I had 6 children. I had 3 for you and 3 for me. And she has a girl and 5 boys. And I said, can I pick out my 3? She said, no, it doesn't work like that.
So you have them all.
I have them all.
They have them all.
I
Oh,
have
God
them all.
bless
In
you.
fact, my niece's birthday is today.
Oh, perfect.
Mary Sue.
Mary
Right.
Sue.
Who's
Happy
named
birthday, Mary Sue.
Yeah, she's named after
And
me.
Joella, thank you for your ministry in the congregation. Most amazing and so very generous. God bless you.
Thank you.